Sebastian Wolf walked through Manhattan's busy streets, his Italian leather shoes clicking against the pavement. At 42, he had everything money could buy: a penthouse overlooking Central Park, a fleet of luxury cars, and an empire worth billions. But he had no one to share it with. His phone buzzed again. Another board meeting, another deal to close, another fortune to make. Sebastian sighed, adjusting his designer watch. The same routine day after day. A woman bumped into him, spilling her coffee on his $3,000 suit. "I'm so sorry," she gasped, frantically dabbing at the stain with a napkin. "Leave it," Sebastian snapped, pushing past her. He didn't have time for this. He never had time for anything except work. That's when it happened. A small hand reached into his pocket, quick as lightning. Sebastian felt the slight tug and spun around. A boy darted through the crowd, clutching his wallet. "Hey, stop that." "Kid!" Sebastian shouted, giving chase. The boy was fast, weaving between pedestrians like he'd done this 100 times before, but Sebastian wasn't about to let some street rat steal from him. The chase led them down a side street. The boy glanced back, losing his footing for just a second. It was enough. Sebastian lunged forward, grabbing the boy's collar. "Gotcha, you little thief," Sebastian growled, spinning the boy around to face him. The words died in his throat. It was like looking in a mirror that showed him 34 years ago, the same stormy grey eyes, the same sharp jawline, even on such a young face, the same unruly dark hair that refused to stay neat no matter how much product you used. Sebastian's grip loosened. The boy tried to break free, but Sebastian held firm. "What's your name?" he demanded. The boy glared up at him, defiant despite being caught. "Why should I tell you?" "Because," Sebastian said, pulling out his business card with his free hand, "I'm Sebastian Wolf, and you just tried to rob the wrong person." The boy's face went pale. His small hands trembled. The wallet dropped to the ground, forgotten. I'm Oliver," the boy whispered. Sebastian's heart pounded. "Oliver what?" "Oliver." "Wolf." The words hit Sebastian like a physical blow. He staggered back, releasing the boy's collar. Oliver didn't run. He just stood there, staring up at Sebastian with those familiar grey eyes. "That's not possible," Sebastian muttered, but he knew it was. He could see it in every feature of the boy's face. "Who's your mother?" "Her name was Emily Carter." Oliver's voice cracked. "She died last month." "Emily." The name brought back a flood of memories Sebastian had spent years trying to forget. Emily with her bright laugh and wild dreams. Emily who he'd loved more than anything. Emily who he'd left behind when his father threatened to disinherit him if he didn't end things with a gold digger like her. Was? Sebastian's throat felt dry. Oliver nodded, tears welling in his eyes. "Cancer. She tried to find you, but your father, he wouldn't let her talk to you. She wrote letters, but they always came back unopened." Sebastian felt sick. All those years, all those letters. His father must have intercepted them all. "Where are you staying now?" Sebastian asked, though he dreaded the answer. "Nowhere, really." Oliver shrugged, trying to act tough despite the tears rolling down his cheeks. "Foster homes sometimes, but I usually run away. They're not nice places." Sebastian looked at this boy, his son, standing alone in a dirty alley, stealing to survive while he lived in luxury. Guilt and anger churned in his stomach. Anger at his father, anger at himself. "Come with me," Sebastian said, holding out his hand. Oliver hesitated. "Why should I trust you? You weren't there before." The words stung, but Sebastian deserved them. "Because I'm your father, and I know I've made mistakes, horrible mistakes, but I want to make things right." Oliver stared at the offered hand for a long moment. Then slowly he reached out and took it. As they walked back to the street together, Sebastian's phone buzzed again. Another meeting, another deal. But for the first time in his life, none of that mattered. He had just found something worth more than all his billions combined. He had found his son. Back in his office, Sebastian cancelled all his meetings. His assistant, Maria, looked shocked. In 15 years, he'd never cancelled a meeting. But this was more important. Oliver sat in one of the leather chairs, looking small and out of place in the massive office. His clothes were worn and dirty, his shoes held together with duct tape. "Are you hungry?" Sebastian asked. Oliver nodded hesitantly. Sebastian ordered lunch, burgers, fries, milkshakes, the kind of food Emily used to love. As they ate, Oliver slowly began to open up. He told Sebastian about Emily, how she'd worked 3 jobs to support them, how she'd never said a bad word about Sebastian, always telling Oliver that his father would have loved him if he'd known about him. How she'd fought the cancer until the very end, trying to hold on long enough to find Sebastian. With each word, Sebastian's heart broke a little more. He'd lost so much time he could never get back. "I want you to live with me," Sebastian said suddenly. Oliver looked up from his burger, suspicious. "Really? Yes, I have plenty of room and I want to know my son." "What if I'm lying?" Oliver challenged. "What if I'm not really your son?" Sebastian smiled sadly. "You're not lying. I can see Emily in every expression you make. Besides," he gestured to Oliver's face, "you look exactly like I did at your age." Oliver was quiet for a long time. Then he asked, "Will you make me go to school?" "Yes." "Will you make me wear fancy clothes?" "Probably." Will you be there, like really there?" Sebastian reached across the desk and took Oliver's small hand in his. "I promise. I've missed too much already. I won't miss another day." Oliver squeezed his hand back. And for the first time that day, he smiled. Neither of them knew it yet, but that smile was just the beginning of a journey that would change both their lives forever. A journey of healing, forgiveness, and learning what it truly means to be a family. Because sometimes the greatest treasures aren't found in bank vaults or stock portfolios. Sometimes they're found in the most unexpected places, like a chance encounter with a young pickpocket on a busy Manhattan street. The elevator doors opened to Sebastian's penthouse apartment. Oliver's eyes went wide as he took in the massive space. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed all of New York City spread out below them like a glittering carpet. "This is where you live?" Oliver whispered, his worn sneakers sinking into the plush carpet. "This is where we live now," Sebastian corrected him. He watched as Oliver walked around, touching everything with careful fingers like he was afraid it might break. Maria, Sebastian's assistant, had already arranged for children's clothes to be delivered. They sat in neat packages on the guest room, bed now Oliver's bed. She'd also contacted his lawyers about starting custody proceedings. "You can pick any color you want for your room," Sebastian said, opening the door to the large guest bedroom. "We'll paint it this weekend." Oliver just nodded, looking overwhelmed. He hadn't said much since they'd left the office. "Are you okay?" Sebastian asked. Oliver sat on the edge of the bed, his feet dangling. "Mom would have loved this view," he said quietly. Sebastian's throat tightened. He sat down next to his son. "Tell me about her, about what she was like these past years." "She never changed," Oliver said, playing with the hem of his shirt. "She still laughed at bad jokes, still danced while she cooked, still," his voice cracked, "still believed in happy endings." Sebastian put his arm around Oliver's shoulders. The boy stiffened for a moment, then leaned into him. "I'm sorry," Sebastian whispered. "I'm so sorry I wasn't there." Oliver wiped his eyes with his sleeve. "She kept all your old pictures, said I looked just like you." "You do." Sebastian smiled. "Sadly, you have her heart, though, I can tell." The doorbell rang, interrupting the moment. Sebastian went to answer it, expecting more deliveries. Instead, he found his father, Gerald Wolfe, standing in the hallway. "What's this nonsense about you canceling the Morrison deal?" Gerald demanded. Pushing past Sebastian into the apartment. "Father," Sebastian started, but it was too late. Gerald had already spotted Oliver. The old man froze. His face went from red to white in seconds. "What is this?" "This is Oliver," Sebastian said firmly. "My son." Gerald's eyes narrowed. "Emily Carter's boy, the gold digger's brat." Oliver flinched like he'd been slapped. Sebastian stepped between them, anger burning in his chest. "Don't you dare," Sebastian growled. "You kept her letters from me. You kept my son from me." "I protected you," Gerald snapped. "That woman would have ruined everything we built. And now her spawn shows up, probably looking for a piece of the fortune." "Get out." Sebastian's voice was ice cold. "What?" "Get out of my home and stay away from my son." Gerald drew himself up, his face turning purple. You can't be serious. This street rat shows up with some story about being your son and you just believe it. Where's your business sense? My business sense? Sebastian laughed bitterly. My business sense cost me 8 years with my son. It cost me Emily. I won't let it cost me anything else. If you do this, Gerald warned, if you bring this mistake into our family, you'll regret it. Sebastian opened the door. The only mistake I made was listening to you 8 years ago. Now leave. Gerald stormed out, but not before giving Oliver one last venomous look. This isn't over. After he left, Sebastian found Oliver hiding in his new room, tears streaming down his face. I'm sorry, Oliver whispered. I shouldn't have come. I'm just causing trouble. Sebastian sat next to him again. No, you're not causing trouble. You're fixing something that was broken a long time ago. But your father isn't half the man your mother was. Sebastian pulled Oliver into a hug. This time Oliver didn't stiffen at all. We're family, and nothing he says or does will change that. That night, after Oliver had fallen asleep in his new bed, Sebastian sat in his office looking at old pictures of Emily on his phone. He'd kept them hidden away for years, too painful to look at. His phone buzzed with a text from his father. The board meeting tomorrow, don't bring the boy. Sebastian deleted the message without responding. Then he called Maria. Cancel my meetings tomorrow, he said, and find me the best family lawyer in New York. We're going shopping for school supplies instead. Yes, sir, Maria replied, and he could hear the smile in her voice. And, sir, it's good to hear you sounding like yourself again. Sebastian looked at the last picture of Emily on his phone. She was laughing, her eyes bright with love and hope. I'll make it right, he whispered to her image, I promise. In his new room, Oliver slept peacefully for the first time since his mother died. On his bedside table sat the wallet he'd tried to steal. Sebastian had given it to him as a reminder of how they found each other. Neither of them knew that Gerald Wolfe was already making calls, pulling strings, determined to protect his empire from what he saw as a threat. But that would come later. For now, in the quiet of the night, a father and son, who had been strangers, that morning were finally where they belonged, together. And somewhere Emily Carter was smiling. Morning came with the smell of burning toast. Sebastian woke to find Oliver in the kitchen, surrounded by eggshells and spilled milk, trying to make breakfast. I used to make it for Mom, Oliver explained, embarrassed, when she was sick. Sebastian looked at the mess, at his son's determined face, and felt his heart swell. How about we make it together? As they cleaned up the kitchen and started over, Sebastian realized something. His hands weren't shaking anymore. For years he'd needed 3 cups of coffee just to steady them enough to sign documents. But now, making burnt toast with his son, they were perfectly still. Sometimes the best medicine isn't found in pills or therapy. Sometimes it's found in simple moments, like teaching your son how to crack an egg without getting shells in the pan. And sometimes the biggest changes in life don't come from billion-dollar deals or corporate takeovers. Sometimes they come from small hands reaching out to steal a wallet and ending up stealing your heart instead. The shopping mall buzzed with activity as Sebastian and Oliver walked through the crowded corridors. Oliver had never seen so many stores in one place. His eyes darted from window to window, but he didn't ask for anything. What kind of backpack do you want? Sebastian asked, stopping in front of a children's store. Oliver shrugged. Any kind is fine. Come on, Sebastian encouraged. There must be one you like. Oliver pointed hesitantly at a blue backpack with planets and stars on it. Mom said I was going to be an astronaut someday. Sebastian's heart clenched. Then that's the one we're getting. As they shopped for school supplies, Sebastian noticed a man following them. He was trying to be discreet, but Sebastian hadn't become a billionaire by being unobservant. His father's words echoed in his mind. This isn't over. Let's get some ice cream, Sebastian said, steering Oliver toward the food court. He pulled out his phone and texted Maria. Need security at the mall, being followed. Within minutes, 2 men in suits appeared, positioning themselves between Sebastian and the stranger. The man quickly disappeared into the crowd. Oliver licked his chocolate ice cream, unaware of what had happened. Can we look at books next? Mom used to take me to the library every weekend. Of course. Sebastian ruffled Oliver's hair. We can buy as many as you want." In the bookstore, Oliver's whole face lit up. He ran straight to the science section, pulling out books about space and astronomy. Sebastian watched him, amazed at how much he was like Emily. She had loved learning, too. His phone buzzed. A text from his head of security. "Man identified as private investigator, hired by Gerald Wolfe." Sebastian's jaw clenched. Of course his father wouldn't give up easily. "Dad?" Oliver called out. Sebastian's heart skipped a beat. It was the first time Oliver had called him that. "Can I get this one?" He was holding a huge book about the solar system. Sebastian smiled, pushing away his worries. "Get 3. Back at the penthouse, Oliver spread his new books on the living room floor. Sebastian sat with him, listening as he excitedly explained about black holes and supernovas. The elevator dinged. Maria stepped out, carrying a thick folder. "The documents you asked for, Mr. Wolfe," she said, her face serious. Sebastian nodded. "Oliver, why don't you go set up your new things in your room?" Oliver gathered his books, giving Maria a shy wave. As he left, she smiled warmly at him. "What did you find?" Sebastian asked once Oliver was gone. Maria opened the folder. "Emily tried to contact you dozens of times, not just letters. She came to the office, called, even hired a lawyer. Your father's people blocked everything." Sebastian's hands shook as he looked through the documents. Copies of letters, legal notices, even a DNA test Emily had done, proving Oliver was his son. "There's more," Maria said softly. "When Emily got sick, she tried again. She knew she was dying. She wanted to make sure Oliver would be taken care of." Sebastian closed his eyes, fighting back tears. "And my father?" "Threatened her. Said if she kept trying to contact you, he'd make sure she lost custody of Oliver completely." "She was dying," Sebastian whispered. "She was dying and he kept her from me." "The private investigator today," Maria continued, "he's not the only one. Your father has hired several. He's building a case." "A case?" "To prove Oliver is unfit to be your heir. He's gathering evidence about Oliver's time on the streets, the stealing, the foster homes." Sebastian stood up, anger burning in his chest. "Get me everything, every piece of evidence that Emily tried to contact me, every threat my father made, everything." "Already done." Maria patted the folder. "I also took the liberty of contacting Judge Harrison. She's an old friend, specializes in family law." Sebastian smiled grimly. "What would I do without you, Maria?" "Crash and burn," she said lightly. "Now go be with your son. I'll handle the sharks." In his room, Oliver had arranged his new books carefully on the shelf. His old, worn backpack sat in the corner, a reminder of his life before. "Everything okay?" Sebastian asked from the doorway. Oliver nodded. "I was just thinking about Mom. She would have loved all this. She always wanted me to have nice things." Sebastian walked over and sat on the bed. "Tell me more about her, about your life together." Oliver climbed up next to him. "We moved around a lot, but she always made it fun, like we were on an adventure. She'd make up stories about each new place." "That sounds like Emily," Sebastian smiled. "She could find magic anywhere." "When she got sick," Oliver's voice trembled, "she still tried to make everything okay. She'd tell me stories about you, about how brave and kind you were." Sebastian's throat tightened. "I wasn't brave. I let other people tell me what to do, what to feel. But that's over now." "Promise?" Oliver looked up at him with those familiar grey eyes. "Promise." Sebastian pulled him close. "No one is going to separate us again." Later that night, after Oliver was asleep, Sebastian sat in his office, looking at the documents Maria had brought. Each page made his anger grow. His phone rang, his father again. Sebastian declined the call and opened his email instead. With steady hands, he began to type. "To all members of the Board of Directors, I am calling an emergency meeting tomorrow morning. There are some things you need to know about how Wolfe Enterprises has really been run." In his bed, Oliver dreamed of stars and planets, of his mother's smile and of a future that finally looked bright. But storm clouds were gathering. Gerald Wolfe sat in his own office across town, looking at reports from his private investigators, making plans of his own. The war for Oliver's future was just beginning, and Sebastian was ready to fight. The Wolf Enterprises boardroom was silent as Sebastian finished speaking. 20 pairs of eyes stared at him in shock. He had just revealed everything. Emily's letters, his father's threats, the years of deception. "This is outrageous," Gerald Wolfe thundered, standing up. "My son is clearly not thinking straight. This street urchin has manipulated him. Enough." Sebastian slammed his hand on the table. "I have proof of everything. Maria?" Maria stepped forward, distributing copies of the documents to each board member. The room filled with the sound of rustling papers and gasps of surprise. "As you can see," Sebastian continued, "my father has been using company resources illegally. Private investigators, bribes, threats, all paid for with company money." One of the older board members, Jane Chen, adjusted her glasses as she read. "These dates, this goes back 8 years. "Yes," Sebastian nodded. "Since the day he first threatened Emily Carter to stay away from me," another board member spoke up. "But why reveal this now, Sebastian?" "Because my son deserves to know his family, his real family." Sebastian looked directly at his father. "And because it's time for a change in leadership." Gerald's face turned purple. "You ungrateful." "I move for an immediate vote of no confidence in Gerald Wolfe as chairman," Jane Chen interrupted. "And I nominate Sebastian Wolfe as his replacement." The vote was quick and decisive. Gerald Wolfe stormed out of the boardroom, but not before turning to his son one last time. "You'll regret this," he snarled. "That boy will destroy everything we built." Sebastian watched him go, feeling strangely peaceful. "No, father. He's already helped me rebuild something much more important." Back at the penthouse, Oliver was having his first day with his new tutor, Ms. Rodriguez. Sebastian had hired her to help Oliver catch up on the schoolwork he'd missed. "He's very bright," Ms. Rodriguez told Sebastian when he got home. "Especially in science and math. With some extra help, he'll be ready for private school by next semester." Oliver beamed at the praise. "Ms. Rodriguez said I could do a science project about space." "That's wonderful." Sebastian smiled, but his eyes were worried. The confrontation with his father wasn't over, he knew that. After Ms. Rodriguez left, Sebastian and Oliver sat down for dinner. Pizza, Oliver's favorite. "Dad?" Oliver asked between bites. "Is everything okay? You look worried." Sebastian was amazed at how perceptive his son was. "Just some business stuff. Nothing for you to worry about." "Is it because of me?" Oliver put down his pizza. "Because Grandpa doesn't want me here." "Listen, to me," Sebastian moved to sit next to Oliver, "nothing that's happening is your fault. Your grandfather. He's angry because he can't control things anymore. But that's his problem, not yours." Oliver nodded, but he still looked troubled. "Mom used to look worried like that too. When she was sick and trying to find you." Sebastian felt his heart break a little more. "I wish I had known. I wish I had been there." "She didn't blame you," Oliver said quietly. "She said your father was the one who kept you apart. She said love always finds a way back." Sebastian hugged his son tight, fighting back tears. "Your mum was very wise." Later that evening, while Oliver was doing his homework, Maria called with disturbing news. "Gerald's been busy," she said. "He's contacted Child Protective Services, filed a report claiming Oliver is living in an unstable environment." Sebastian felt his blood run cold. "What?" "He's claiming you're an unfit parent, that you're never home, that you have no experience with children. He's even dug up Oliver's record of stealing. He's trying to take him away from me," Sebastian realized, "just like he took Emily away." "We won't let that happen," Maria said firmly. "Judge Harrison has agreed to hear our case. And I've been gathering evidence of our own. Testimonies from Ms. Rodriguez, from Oliver's doctors, even from the security team. We can prove you're providing a loving, stable home." Sebastian looked toward Oliver's room, where his son was bent over his science homework, tongue sticking out in concentration. "I can't lose him, Maria. I can't let my father win again." "You won't," Maria assured him. "But Sebastian, and there's something else you should know." Sebastian tensed. "What?" "I found Emily's old apartment. The landlord kept some of her things in storage, hoping someone would claim them. There are letters, photos, and a diary." Sebastian sat down heavily. "Have you read it?" "No," Maria said, but the landlord said she wrote in it every day during her illness. She wanted Oliver to have it when he was older. "Get it," Sebastian said. Please, Oliver should have it. After hanging up, Sebastian went to check on Oliver. He found his son had fallen asleep at his desk, his face peaceful in the soft lamplight. Carefully, Sebastian carried him to bed. As he tucked him in, Oliver stirred. "Dad," he mumbled sleepily. "Yes?" "I'm glad you found me." Sebastian kissed his forehead. "Me too, buddy. Me too." But as he walked back to his own room, Sebastian's mind was racing. What secrets did Emily's diary hold? What had she written during those final months? And more importantly, how far would Gerald Wolfe go to destroy this fragile new family? In his mansion across town, Gerald Wolfe sat in his study, looking at an old photograph. It showed a young Sebastian with his mother, Gerald's first wife, who had died when Sebastian was just a boy. "I'm protecting our legacy," he whispered to the photo. Why can't he understand that? But the woman in the photo just smiled her frozen smile, holding secrets of her own. Secrets that would soon change everything. Maria arrived at the penthouse carrying a worn cardboard box. Inside were Emily's last possessions, photo albums, letters and a leather-bound diary with a broken spine. The landlord said she wrote in it every day, Maria explained, setting the box on Sebastian's desk. Even in the hospital. Sebastian stared at the box, his hands trembling slightly. Oliver should see this first. It's his mother's. "Dad." Oliver's voice came from the doorway. He was supposed to be doing homework, but he'd heard Maria arrive. His eyes fixed on the box. "What's that?" Sebastian beckoned him over. "These are your mom's things. The landlord saved them." Oliver approached slowly, like he was in a dream. His small hands reached for the diary first, recognizing his mother's. Handwriting on the cover. "She used to write in this every night," he whispered. "She wouldn't let me read it. Said it was for when I was older." Sebastian put his arm around Oliver's shoulders. "Would you like to read it now? We could read it together." Oliver nodded, clutching the diary to his chest. Maria quietly excused herself, leaving father and son alone. They sat on the office couch, and Oliver carefully opened the diary to the first page. "Dear Oliver," he read, his voice shaking. "If you're reading this, it means I couldn't find your father in time. But don't be angry with him, sweetheart. He doesn't know about you, and that's not his fault." Tears rolled down Oliver's cheeks. As he read his mother's words, Sebastian held him close, his own eyes wet as Emily's voice seemed to fill the room through her written words. "Your father was the kindest man I ever knew," the diary continued. "His father made him believe that love was a weakness, that money was all that mattered. But I saw his real heart, the heart you inherited." They read for hours. Emily had documented everything. Her struggles to contact Sebastian, her joy in raising Oliver, her fight against cancer. But it was an entry from her final weeks that made Sebastian's blood run cold. "Gerald Wolfe came to see me today," Oliver read. "He said he would destroy any chance of you having a relationship with your father unless I signed some papers. He said a woman like me would only bring shame to the Wolfe name. But he doesn't understand. The Wolfe name already belongs to you, my darling boy. You have your father's strength and my heart. And someday, you'll find each other. Love always finds." "Away!" Sebastian took the diary gently from Oliver's trembling hands. "Papers? What papers?" They dug through the box together, finding a thick envelope at the bottom. Inside were legal documents, dated just weeks before Emily's death. Sebastian's face went white as he read them. "These are adoption papers. My father, he tried to make your mother give up her parental rights, to make you disappear into the system. But she didn't sign them," Oliver pointed out, looking at the blank signature line. "No," Sebastian smiled proudly. "No, she didn't." Just then, Sebastian's phone buzzed with a text from Maria. "Emergency. Gerald's made his move. CPS visiting tomorrow morning." Sebastian felt panic rise in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. "Oliver, why don't you look through the photo albums? I need to make a quick call." In the hallway, Sebastian called Maria. What exactly did he do? "He's claiming Emily was an unfit mother," Maria said grimly. "That Oliver's history of stealing proves it. He's trying to have Oliver placed in state custody. Using the same papers Emily refused to sign, Sebastian realized. He's trying to do now what he couldn't do then. Judge Harrison wants to see you both first thing tomorrow. She's reviewed the diary and Emily's documents. She thinks we can stop this, but what? Gerald's got one more card to play. He's claiming you're emotionally unstable, that finding Oliver has made you act irrationally, turning against your own father. Sebastian laughed bitterly. Of course he is. Back in the office, Oliver was looking at a photo of his mother at the beach. She was young and beautiful, laughing at the camera. Dad? Oliver looked up. Are they going to take me away? Sebastian's heart clenched. Of course, Oliver had overheard. He was too smart not to understand what was happening. No, Sebastian said firmly, sitting back down. No one is taking you anywhere. Your mother fought to keep us together, and I'm going to fight just as hard. Oliver leaned against him, still holding the photo. I miss her. I know, buddy, I miss her too. Sebastian picked up the diary again. But she left us these words. She left us her story, and tomorrow we're going to use that story to fight back. They spent the rest of the evening looking through Emily's things together. Each photo, each letter, each diary entry painted a picture of a mother's love and determination. But as Oliver finally fell asleep on the couch, surrounded by memories of his mother, Sebastian's mind was racing. What else had his father done? What other secrets were hidden in the Wolf family's past? The answer would come from an unexpected source, and it would change everything. In his study, Gerald Wolf looked at another set of papers, yellowed with age, but their power still potent. Papers that could destroy everything Sebastian believed about his own past. I'm sorry, son, Gerald whispered to the empty room, but some secrets have to stay buried. The storm was coming, and tomorrow would decide not just Oliver's fate, but the fate of the entire Wolf family, because every family has secrets, and some secrets have the power to heal or destroy everything they touch. Judge Harrison's chambers were warm and welcoming, with photos of her own family decorating the walls. Oliver sat between Sebastian and Maria, his small hands clutching Emily's diary. I've reviewed the documents your father submitted, Judge Harrison said, looking at Sebastian over her reading. Glasses. And I must say I find the timing suspicious. Your Honor, Gerald's lawyer began, but the judge held up her hand. I'm not finished. She picked up Emily's diary. I spent all night reading this. What I found was a record of a devoted mother and a pattern of harassment that disturbs me deeply. Gerald Wolf shifted in his seat, his face red. That woman, Judge Harrison cut in sharply, documented every attempt you made to separate her from her son, including attempted coercion while she was dying of cancer. Sebastian felt Oliver tense beside him. He squeezed his son's shoulder gently. Furthermore, the judge continued, I've reviewed Mr. Sebastian Wolf's arrangements for his son. A stable home, excellent educational opportunities, and most importantly, a loving environment. The CPS report shows no cause for concern. Gerald stood up suddenly. This is ridiculous. That boy is destroying everything, just like his mother tried to do, Mr. Wolf. Judge Harrison's voice was steel. Control yourself or leave my chambers. But Gerald was beyond control. Sebastian is just like his mother, weak, sentimental, easily manipulated. The room went silent. Sebastian stared at his father. What did you say? Gerald's face went pale, realizing his slip. I meant... No. Sebastian stood up slowly. You said I'm just like my mother. The mother who died when I was 5. The mother I barely remember. Judge Harrison leaned forward, her interest piqued. Mr. Wolf, is there something you'd like to share with the court? Gerald sank back into his chair, looking suddenly old and defeated. It doesn't matter now. It matters to me. Sebastian's voice shook. What aren't you telling me about my mother? Gerald pulled an envelope from his briefcase with trembling hands. I was going to destroy these. Should have done it years ago. Sebastian took the envelope. Inside were letters, dozens of them, all in his mother's handwriting, all addressed to him, all dated after her supposed death. She didn't die, Gerald said quietly. She left, or rather I made her leave. The room spun around Sebastian. Oliver grabbed his hand, anchoring him to the moment. She was like Emily, Gerald continued, his voice hollow. Kind, creative, more interested in love than money. I thought she was making you soft, so I gave her a choice. Leave, never contact you again, and get a generous settlement. Or stay and watch me destroy everything and everyone she cared about. Sebastian's hands shook as he read the first letter. My dearest Sebastian, I know you think I'm gone, but I'm still here, still loving you. She wrote to you every month, Gerald said. For years. I kept them all, telling myself I was protecting you, protecting the empire I was building. Judge Harrison's face was thunderous. Mr. Wolfe, do you understand the severity of what you're admitting? You deliberately separated a mother from her child, and then attempted to do the same thing again, with your grandson. I did what I thought was right, Gerald insisted, but his voice wavered. Where is she? Sebastian demanded. My mother. Is she still alive? Gerald nodded slowly. Living in Florence. She never remarried, never stopped writing. The last letter came just a month ago. Sebastian felt like he couldn't breathe. Oliver tugged at his sleeve. Dad. Oliver's voice was small but steady. Remember what Mom wrote in her diary. Love always finds a way. Sebastian looked at his son, this brave, wise child who had already lost one parent, who understood loss and love better than anyone. Your Honor, Sebastian turned to Judge Harrison, I'd like to amend my petition. I'm not just seeking custody of Oliver. I'm seeking a complete investigation into my father's actions, both past and present. Judge Harrison smiled. Already done, Mr. Wolfe. I've contacted the district attorney's office. Mr. Gerald Wolfe, you'll need to surrender your passport. There will be charges. Gerald seemed to shrink in his chair. Sebastian, son, don't. Sebastian cut him off. Don't call me that. Not after what you've done. As they left the judge's chambers, Maria was already on her phone. I'm booking 2 tickets to Florence, she said. For next week. Oliver looked up at Sebastian. Are we going to find your mom? Sebastian knelt down to his son's level. Would you like to meet your grandmother? Oliver nodded. Do you think she'll like me? She'll love you, Sebastian smiled, through his tears. Just like your mom loved you. Just like I love you. They walked out of the courthouse into the bright sunlight. Gerald Wolfe was led away by court officers, his empire crumbling around him. But Sebastian didn't look back. He was looking forward to Florence, to finding his mother, to building a new kind of family, one based on love, not power. In his pocket, Emily's diary pressed against his heart. And somewhere in Florence, another mother waited, holding 30 years of letters and a lifetime of love. Because sometimes the greatest lies hide the most beautiful truths, and sometimes it takes a child's simple wisdom to unravel the tangled threads of the past. The truth was finally coming out, and with it the chance for healing, not just for Sebastian and Oliver, but for 3 generations of the Wolfe family. Love, as Emily had written, always finds a way. The Florence sun was different from New York's, softer somehow, warming the cobblestone streets as Sebastian and Oliver made their way through the historic city center. Maria had found the address, a small art gallery in an ancient building near the Arno River. Is this it? Oliver asked, looking up at the weathered sign that read Carter Gallery. Sebastian's heart stopped. Carter, that was my mom's last name, Oliver finished. His eyes were wide. Dad, look. In the gallery window was a painting of a woman with familiar grey eyes, signed E. Carter. Below it was a smaller canvas, a child's drawing of the New York skyline, signed O. Carter. Those are Mum's paintings, Oliver whispered. She used to sell them sometimes when we needed money, but how? The gallery door opened, and an elegant woman in her 60s stepped out. She had Sebastian's dark hair, now streaked with silver, and the same sharp jawline. She froze when she saw them. Sebastian? Her voice trembled. My boy? Mom, Sebastian breathed. She took a step forward, then stopped, noticing Oliver. Her hand flew to her mouth. And you must be. I'm Oliver, he said shyly. Emily was my mum. Emily. The woman's eyes filled with tears. My sweet Emily. She found me years ago, showed me her paintings, told me about her son, my grandson. I've been helping her sell her art, sending the money anonymously. You knew. Sebastian's voice cracked. You knew about Oliver. Elizabeth Wolfe, now Elizabeth Carter, nodded. Emily discovered I was living here. She came to my gallery with her paintings and her story. When I realized she had fallen in love with my son, had given me a grandson, I couldn't turn her away. But Gerald's threats still haunted me. I was too afraid to reach out directly. So you helped from the shadows, Sebastian realized. All those times Emily mysteriously got money for Oliver's medical bills, for rent. It was the least I could do, Elizabeth said. I couldn't be there for you, Sebastian, but I could help your son. Emily understood. She knew what it was like to love a child and be forced away. Oliver stepped forward and took Elizabeth's hand. Mum said her paintings made people happy. That's why she never stopped, even when she was sick. Elizabeth knelt, down to his level, touching his face gently. You look just like your father did at your age. I have photos. Would you like to see them? Oliver nodded eagerly. They went upstairs to Elizabeth's apartment above the gallery. The walls were covered with Emily's paintings, landscapes, portraits, and dozens of pictures of Oliver growing up, painted from photographs. Emily sent me pictures, Elizabeth explained, bringing out albums. She said Oliver should know his family's history, even if we couldn't be together. Sebastian looked at a photo of himself at Oliver's age, playing in a garden. I remember this. It was right before you left. The hardest day of my life. Elizabeth touched the photo. Gerald said he would destroy everyone I loved if I stayed. He'd already ruined my family's business, driven away my friends. I thought leaving would protect you, just like Emily tried to protect me, Oliver said quietly. Elizabeth hugged him suddenly. But love found a way back, just like Emily always said it would. They spent hours looking through photos and paintings. Elizabeth had kept everything, Sebastian's school reports that Gerald had sent her, newspaper clippings about his success, and even the announcement of his planned wedding to a socialite years ago. I knew she wasn't right for you, Elizabeth said. She reminded me too much of Gerald, all surface, no heart. How did you know Emily was different? Sebastian asked. Elizabeth smiled, gesturing to the paintings around them. Look at how she saw the world. Look at the love in every brushstroke. She painted you once, you know, said she wanted Oliver to know his father's true face. She went to a covered canvas in the corner and unveiled it. Sebastian gasped. It was him, younger, laughing at something off canvas, but Emily had captured something in his eyes. A softness, a capacity for love that Gerald had tried so hard to stamp out. She saw you, Elizabeth said softly. The real you, just like I always did. Oliver tugged at Sebastian's sleeve. Dad? Look what I found. He held up a small painting of 3 people, a dark-haired man, a boy, and a woman with silver streaks in her hair. On the back, in Emily's handwriting, was a note. The future I see for my son. A family united by love, not divided by fear. Keep this safe, Elizabeth, until the day they find their way to you. Sebastian pulled Oliver close, reaching for his mother's hand. She knew. Somehow she knew we'd all find each other. Elizabeth wiped her eyes. Emily had a gift for seeing the truth in people's hearts. Now who's hungry? I make a mean pasta and there's a lifetime of stories to share. As they sat down to dinner in the warm Florentine evening, Sebastian looked at his son and his mother, the family he'd thought he'd lost, the family Emily had helped him find. Outside, the Arno River flowed beneath ancient bridges, carrying secrets and stories. And in a small gallery apartment, 3 generations of lost souls finally found their way home. Because sometimes the greatest masterpieces aren't painted on canvas. Sometimes they're painted in moments like these, in shared meals, in rediscovered photographs, in the simple miracle of being together. Emily had known that. She'd painted it in every picture, written it in every diary entry. Love was the greatest masterpiece of all. And now, in a city of art and history, her final painting had come to life. A family united, a love restored, a future full of possibilities. The pasta grew cold as they talked and laughed and cried together. But no one minded. They had time now, all the time in the world. The New York tabloids were having a field day. "Wolf family scandal," screamed the headlines. "Billionaire's secret past exposed." Gerald Wolf's arrest had opened a floodgate of revelations. But in Florence, in Elizabeth's sun-drenched apartment above the gallery, none of that seemed to matter. "More pancakes?" Elizabeth asked, sliding another stack onto Oliver's plate. She'd discovered her grandson shared her love of breakfast for dinner. "These are even better than Dad's." Oliver grinned, drowning them in syrup. "Hey!" Sebastian protested, but he was smiling. The past week in Florence had changed him. The constant tension in his shoulders had eased. He laughed more easily. The gallery phone rang. Elizabeth answered it, her face growing serious. "Sebastian, it's Maria." Sebastian took the phone. "What's wrong?" "The board is getting nervous," Maria said. "Gerald's arrest, the scandal. Some shareholders are talking about selling. We need you back in New York." Sebastian looked at his mother and son, happily chatting over pancakes. "I can't leave yet." "Then don't," Elizabeth said, having overheard. "The gallery has plenty of room. We could all go back together." Oliver's eyes lit up. "Really? You'd come with us?" Elizabeth hesitated. "It's been 30 years since I left New York. Gerald is in jail," Sebastian finished. "And the apartment above the New York gallery is empty. It could be yours." Elizabeth's hands trembled slightly. "The New York gallery," Sebastian nodded. "I bought it years ago when it was failing. Could never bring myself to change anything. Now I know why. It reminded me of you somehow." "You bought Jerome's old gallery," Elizabeth whispered. "Your father said he'd destroyed it." "Another lie," Sebastian said bitterly. "I found out later that he'd forced your friend Jerome to sell it. I bought it back, kept it exactly as it was." Oliver, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. "Mom's paintings could be there too, like here." Elizabeth touched one of Emily's canvases on the wall, a sunset over the New York skyline. "A Carter gallery in New York again. Emily would have loved that." "Then it's settled," Sebastian said. "Maria, book 3 tickets back to New York and contact the renovation team. The gallery needs to be ready." After hanging up, Sebastian found Oliver in Elizabeth's studio, looking at an old photograph. It showed a young Elizabeth teaching a small Sebastian to paint. "I remember that day," Elizabeth said softly, joining them. "You were so determined to get the colors just right." "I stopped painting after you left," Sebastian admitted. "Father said it was a waste of time." Elizabeth touched his cheek. "It's never too late to start again." Oliver picked up a brush. "Mom taught me a little. I could show you." And so, as the Florence sun set outside, 3 generations of the Wolf family sat before blank canvases. Oliver showed his father how to mix colors, just as Emily had shown him. Elizabeth corrected their brushstrokes, her teacher's heart coming alive again. "What should we paint?" Sebastian asked. "Home," Oliver said simply. "Both our homes." Together, they began to paint the New York skyline, merging with Florence's ancient domes. Oliver added stars, "Because Mom said we're all under the same sky." Elizabeth painted the Arno flowing into the Hudson, and Sebastian, with shaking hands, painted 3 figures standing together. The phone rang again. More business emergencies, more scandal fallout. But Sebastian let it ring. Some things were more important than empire building. Emily had known that. Elizabeth had known that. And now, finally, Sebastian knew it too. Later that night, as Oliver slept surrounded by their attempted masterpieces, Sebastian found his mother on the balcony. "I'm scared," Elizabeth admitted. "New York holds so many ghosts." "We'll face them together," Sebastian said. "Oliver taught me that. He's so much like Emily, seeing the good in everything, believing in second chances." Elizabeth smiled through tears. "Third chances in our case?" Inside, Oliver stirred in his sleep, smiling at some dream. Maybe he was dreaming of the New York gallery, of Emily's paintings finding a new home, of a family finally whole. "You know," Elizabeth said, "Emily used to send me letters too, telling me about Oliver, about her hopes for him. She said something, once, that I never forgot." "What was that?" "She said that love is like art. Sometimes you have to step back, let the paint dry, and trust that the picture will be beautiful in the end. Sebastian looked at their 3 canvases drying in the studio. Different styles, different perspectives, but somehow forming a complete picture together. She was right, he said softly. The next morning they began packing up the gallery. Each painting was carefully wrapped, each memory gently preserved. Oliver insisted on carrying Emily's last painting himself, the one of the 3 of them together, the one that had somehow predicted this moment. As they locked up the Florence gallery, Elizabeth paused. 30 years, she murmured. I came, here broken, thinking I'd lost everything, but look what I found instead. Oliver took her hand, and look what we're bringing home. They drove to the airport through Florence's ancient streets. The city had been Elizabeth's refuge, her place of exile. Now it would always be something more, the place where a broken family had finally healed. But New York was calling. And with it, new challenges, new beginnings, and the chance to create something beautiful from the ashes of the past. Because sometimes the most precious masterpieces are the ones painted not in oils or watercolors, but in forgiveness, in healing, in the simple courage to begin again. Emily had known that. She'd painted it in every canvas, written it in every letter, and now her family, all of her family, would carry that legacy forward. Together, New York felt different when they landed. The same towering buildings, the same bustling streets, but something had changed. Maybe it was them. Maria was waiting at the airport with 3 pieces of news. The first was good. The New York gallery was ready, renovated, but faithful to its original character. The second was concerning. The board had called an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning. The third made Sebastian's blood run cold. Gerald's out on bail, Maria said quietly, while Oliver and Elizabeth were distracted by baggage claim. His lawyers worked fast. Sebastian felt the old tension return to his shoulders. Does he know about Mom coming back? Not yet, but Sebastian, Maria hesitated. There's something else. The police found more documents in his office. Things about your mother, about Emily, and about Thomas Carter. Sebastian frowned. Emily's father? What about him? He didn't die in an accident like everyone thought. Gerald, he orchestrated it. Thomas Carter was going to expose some illegal dealings, so Gerald had his brakes tampered with. Sebastian steadied himself against a pillar. Does Oliver know? No. The police wanted to talk to him first. Dad, Oliver called out. Look what? Grandma bought me at the Florence airport. Sebastian forced a smile as Oliver ran up, proudly showing off a small paint set. But his mind was racing. How many lives had his father destroyed? How many families had he torn apart? The drive to the gallery was quiet, everyone lost in their own thoughts. But when they pulled up to the familiar old building in Greenwich Village, Elizabeth gasped. It's exactly the same, she whispered. The faded blue awning, the brass door handle shaped like a paintbrush, even the old wooden easel in the window, all just as she'd left them 30 years ago. Inside, the renovation team had worked miracles. The original hardwood floors gleamed. Track lighting highlighted empty walls, ready for Emily's paintings. And upstairs, the apartment had been modernized while keeping its artistic soul. Look, Grandma. Oliver ran to a wall of built-in shelves. Dad made space for all Mum's paintings. Elizabeth touched the shelves gently. Jerome would have loved this. He always said this place had magic in its walls. Speaking of Jerome, Maria cleared her throat. He heard you were coming back. He's been asking to see you. Elizabeth's hand trembled. Jerome is still painting, still teaching. His studio is just a few blocks away. Sebastian watched his mother's face soften at the mention of her old friend. Another piece of her past, waiting to be reclaimed, but there was no time for reunions yet. Maria's phone buzzed with messages about tomorrow's board meeting. The business papers were full of speculation about Gerald's arrest, about the future of Wolf Enterprises. You should rest, Sebastian told his mother and son. I need to go to the office, prepare for tomorrow. I'll help you unpack first, Oliver insisted, but Sebastian could see the jet lag in his eyes. Sleep, he said firmly. Both of you, tomorrow's going to be a big day. In the town car, Maria briefed him on the situation. Some board members were calling for a complete separation from the Wolf family. Others wanted to maintain the status quo, scandal or no scandal. And Gerald, Sebastian asked. His lawyers are good. They're spinning it as a family dispute gotten out of hand. But the Thomas Carter evidence, that's harder to explain away. Sebastian looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, his father was plotting his next move. The old Gerald Wolf wouldn't go down without a fight. The offices of Wolf Enterprises were mostly empty when they arrived, but a light was on in the conference room. Through the glass walls, Sebastian saw a familiar figure sitting at the head of the table. Gerald Wolf looked smaller somehow. His expensive suit couldn't hide the electronic monitoring anklet on his ankle, but his eyes were the same. Cold, calculating. "Hello, son," he said as Sebastian entered. "We need to talk." Sebastian remained standing. "About what? How you killed Emily's father? How you drove my mother away? How many other lives you've destroyed?" "I built this company from nothing," Gerald's voice rose. "Everything I did was to protect our legacy." "No," Sebastian's voice was ice. "Everything you did was to protect your control, but you've lost that now." Gerald smiled thinly. "Have I? The board still respects me. They understand business requires difficult decisions. Murder, blackmail, is that what you call business? Thomas Carter was going to ruin everything, just like his daughter tried to do. Just like your mother." "Don't," Sebastian growled. "Don't. You dare talk about them." "I heard she's back," Gerald said softly. "Elizabeth. Still playing with her little paintings, and now she's filling Oliver's head with the same nonsense Emily did." Sebastian's hands clenched. "Stay away from them." "Or what?" Gerald stood up. "This company is my life's work. I won't let it be destroyed by sentiment." "No," Sebastian said. "You won't destroy anything ever again." He pulled out his phone and pressed play. Gerald's voice filled the room. "Thomas Carter was going to ruin everything. I won't let it be destroyed." Gerald's face went white. "You recorded?" "Everything," Sebastian finished. "The police are probably already on their way." "Conspiracy to commit murder isn't covered by bail conditions." As if on cue, sirens wailed in the distance. Gerald lunged for the door, but Sebastian blocked his path. "It's over, father. The empire you built on lies and pain. It's done." Gerald's face twisted with rage. He swung at Sebastian, his fist connecting with his son's jaw, but Sebastian didn't fight back. He didn't need to. The police burst in, and Gerald Wolf, the great manipulator, the empire builder, was led away in handcuffs. In his pocket, Sebastian's phone buzzed with a text from Oliver. "Grandma's making pancakes for dinner again. Come." Home soon. Home, not the cold penthouse where he'd lived for years, but the warm gallery apartment where his mother and son waited, where Emily's paintings would soon fill the walls, where love was stronger than ambition. Sebastian touched his bruised jaw and smiled. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. The board meeting, the press, the endless questions, but tonight there were pancakes waiting, and that was all that mattered. 1 year later, the Carter Gallery was alive with light and color. Emily's paintings covered the walls, telling stories of love and hope. New artists displayed their work too. Elizabeth had kept her promise to make the gallery a home for dreamers, just like Jerome had done 30 years ago. Oliver stood in front of his latest painting, nervously adjusting its frame. At 9 years old, he was already showing his mother's talent. Tonight was his first real exhibition, 3 generations featuring works by Emily, Elizabeth, and Oliver Wolf. "It's perfect," Sebastian said, coming up behind his son. His own attempt at painting hung nearby, not as skilled as the others, but full of heart. The gallery was filling up with people. Maria had handled the press perfectly, turning the Wolf family story from a scandal into a tale of redemption. The New York Times art critic was there, along with collectors and art lovers, but the guest Oliver was most nervous about hadn't arrived yet. "Do you think he'll come?" Oliver asked, fidgeting with his tie, a smaller version of Sebastian's. Sebastian squeezed his shoulder. Jerome never breaks a promise. As if on cue, the gallery door opened. Jerome Carter walked in, leaning on his cane, but still tall and dignified. His eyes found Elizabeth immediately. "Lizzie," he said softly, using the nickname from 30 years. "Ergo. You finally came home." Elizabeth hurried forward to embrace her old friend. They had reconnected over the past year, sharing stories of the decades apart. Jerome had been more than Emily's uncle. He had been her protector after Gerald destroyed her family. She would be so proud, Jerome said, looking around at Emily's paintings. "Both of you." He turned to Oliver. "Now, young man, show me this masterpiece of yours." Oliver led Jerome to his painting, a triptych showing 3 scenes. The first panel showed Florence, with Elizabeth at her easel. The middle panel showed Emily, painted from Oliver's memories and photographs, teaching a younger Oliver to mix colors. The final panel showed Sebastian and Oliver in the New York gallery, surrounded by family. "You have your mother's gift," Jerome said, studying the painting. "Not just for art, but for seeing the truth in people's hearts." The exhibition was a success. Critics praised the raw emotion in Emily's work, the elegant technique in Elizabeth's landscapes, and the promising talent of young Oliver Wolf. But more importantly, the gallery felt alive again, filled with the kind of magic Jerome had always talked about. Later that night, after the crowds had gone, the family gathered in the apartment upstairs. Elizabeth's pancakes had become a tradition. Celebrations weren't complete without them. "I have something to show you," Sebastian said, pulling out an envelope. "The board approved it this morning. Inside were documents changing the company, name from Wolf Enterprises to Carter Wolf Foundation. The new mission statement emphasized supporting the arts, funding children's education, and helping single parents, all in Emily's memory." "Really?" Oliver's eyes were wide. "Mom's name will be on everything?" "She always saw the best in people," Sebastian said. "Now her legacy will help others do the same." Elizabeth wiped tears from her eyes. "Emily knew this would happen, you know. Not the details, but the feeling of it. She wrote about it in her diary, how love would win in the end." "Speaking of diaries," Jerome reached into his bag, "I found this in my old studio. Emily left it there the last time she visited." It was a small sketchbook filled with Emily's drawings, but these weren't finished paintings. They were quick sketches of Oliver growing up with notes in the margins. On the last page was a letter. "My dearest Oliver, if you're reading this, then everything I hoped for has come true. You found your father, who will love you as much as I do. You've met Elizabeth, who will teach you that art heals all wounds. And you're surrounded by the kind of love I always wanted for you. Remember what I told you about stars, how they seem so far apart, but they're all connected by invisible lines. That's what family is. Not just blood, but the invisible lines of love that connect us all. Keep painting, my sweet boy. Keep seeing the beauty in the world, and know that I'm always with you in every color you mix, every line you draw, every dream you dream. All my love, Mom." Oliver traced his mother's handwriting with his finger. "Dad, can we hang this in the gallery too?" Sebastian hugged his son close. "Of course we can." In his cell, Gerald Wolfe stared at the newspaper article about the Carter Gallery's revival. His empire was gone, transformed into something he couldn't understand. But sometimes, in the quiet moments, he looked at the picture of Oliver's triptych and felt something he couldn't name. Maybe it was regret. Maybe it was understanding. Maybe it was the first glimpse of the truth Emily had seen all along. The gallery lights dimmed, but voices and laughter still drifted down from the apartment above. Elizabeth was teaching Oliver a new painting technique. Sebastian was attempting to flip pancakes, probably making a mess. Jerome was telling stories about Emily as a child, keeping her memory alive. And somewhere in every brushstroke on the gallery walls, in every shared smile and tender moment, Emily's love lived on. Because she had been right all along. Love was like art. Sometimes you had to step back, let the paint dry, and trust that the picture would be beautiful in the end. The Carter Gallery's lights glowed softly in the New York night, a beacon of hope and second chances. Inside, 3 generations of artists, some by blood, some by choice, continued Emily's legacy of love, truth, and the courage to begin again. And in the end, that was the greatest masterpiece of all. The stars twinkled above the city, drawing their invisible lines of connection. In a small corner of Greenwich Village, a family once broken by lies had been remade by love. Our gallery, once silenced by power, had found its voice again. Because sometimes the most precious things in life aren't the empires we build or the fortunes we amass. Sometimes they're found in simple moments, in shared pancake dinners, in teaching a child to paint, in the courage to love despite loss. Emily had known that. Elizabeth had remembered it. And now Sebastian and Oliver lived it every day in a gallery filled with light and color and the endless possibilities of love. The story wasn't over. It was just beginning again, painted in new colors, drawn with sure strokes of hope and healing, and somewhere Emily was smiling.